Welcome back to week 6 of completing and ranking every single beginner's Python course on the internet. This week we have finished learnpython.org, so I've ranked it against 7 different categories and come up with some feedback that will enable future people to get more value out of the course. Without further ado, let's jump into the PowerPoint. Today we're firstly going to quickly flick over the website just to refresh ourselves with what that looks like. We're then going to go through the 7 different categories that I've come up with and rank this course against those categories. Within that, there will be a fun part slash, the highlights of the course. It's not all doom and gloom. At the end, we'll get to a summary of all those rankings, and then there'll be a bit of feedback and how I think the course could be improved. So firstly, what is it? So it's nothing that crazy, to be honest. Here's the website up top. It's literally as its name says on the tin. Within that, you've got something like 26 to 30-ish lessons. So if we go on one of them, for example, dictionaries, then within this, we've got a bit of an explanation and a live Python module. I'm not sure what you call this, inline code perhaps. So we go over a handful of examples. For example, here we're adding a value into our phone book, and here we're deleting a value from our phone book. And then at the end of the spiel, you'll have an exercise, and here you'll notice this one is different in that this has a submit and solution button, whereas this one is just run. So that's the gist of it, really. You've got the basics, coding for kids, which is super basics, strange order, and then the advanced tutorials. That is it. It's all completely free, and now we're going to jump back into the PowerPoint and review it. So before I begin, I should mention that these categories are scored out of 10. So the first one I came up with is the relevance and the sort of context, the big picture sort of stuff. For this, I scored it a 2. So it's not a great start, but I really found that all the analogies and most of the real world use cases I had to come up with in my head. So for me, there was no real course overview and structure of how we'd flow through the course. And then again, a lot of the analogies I had to come up with myself. And for me, that made it slightly challenging in that I didn't know why I was learning a subject and how that meshed together with the broader topic, and again, how that fits into a real world scenario. So next up, we have the course structure that I touched on a little bit there. So rather than the analogies and the real world relevance, this one is looking at how the topics are grouped and is this presented. This one I scored a 5, so it wasn't as bad as the analogies example, but there was a beginner's half and an advanced half, and we'll go on to it later, but those were sort of roughly correct, and that was useful just to be able to see the entire structure, which isn't the same in every course. So the quality of the content. So is it actually good stuff you're learning, and is it straightforward to follow? So this is a big one. What you're quizzed on at the end of your lesson, is that what you've just been taught? So there's a common theme of talking about one thing and one type of thing, but the solution to the problem not really doing it in the same method. So there were a couple of instances of this perhaps, or it wasn't directly clear which part of the lesson you were meant to use to solve the problem. Maybe that was the wording in the question. So this 9, I believe this is the best ranking out of all the categories for this course. It might be the only 9 as well, I believe. But I felt like the course was really comprehensive and really deleted a lot of those unknown unknowns in my mind, which I think when you're a beginner, I think that's like a really important step, is that you don't have to be an expert on what you've just learned, but you just have to know that it exists so that if you need to look it up, you can. So I created this category for the purpose of addressing some sort of two-way system of learning. So when you're reading a big block of text, let's call that at the lowest level of learning. If you're reading a big block of text and maybe putting in a couple of words yourself, that might be a bit better. Or if it's a video speaking to you with diagrams, etc., there's a bit more going on. So the purpose of this category was to assess the interface between you and the course, and if that works to the advantage of the course or if it doesn't. This one I gave it a 6. So there are the inline code editors, but the only interaction you do is actually right at the end. The code editors already have the code of the example pre-populated, so it's nice you can see what works, but as we're learning, it might be nice to actually type something or do something ourselves. So we're halfway through now, and I fear that it might be all a bit doom and gloom. So I wanted to take a moment just to highlight that there have been some good bits, and you know, it is a good course. So in third place, we've got Coding for Kids, and if I'm a master editor, I will edit the video without audio of one of the stone runs. But yeah, that's just like a really fun little bit, and obviously it's a great initiative that they're offering this course to kids for free. Second place, we've got the exercises. So at the end of each lesson, I did enjoy having to do my own bit, and because I used Visual Studio Code, I was able to take that code and sort of run with it. And I really felt that was when the best sort of learning took place, is when I sort of challenged myself with my own questions, and perhaps that could be an improvement for next time, is providing the learner with some sort of framework or goal that they're trying to achieve in the exercise question. But I can see why they've done what they have done, because it allows you to click the solution and see the right answer, which is really helpful. Not sure that's such an issue in the world of AI these days, but I think this was written back in Python 2 times. So, and there were a couple of nuances actually. Sorry, I'm trying to be positive in this bit, but there were a couple of nuances when I was learning Python 2 syntax, and actually it had been superseded by Python 3. Moving on to the actual best bit. So for me, it was just that course overview and seeing, okay, this is exactly how many lessons I've got, and this is exactly what they're called. I just really enjoyed having that oversight, and I think I can only appreciate that now that I've moved on to other learning platforms. So back to the categories, we've got pacing. Is it, well, this is basically, is it fun? You know, am I struggling to turn on my computer at, say, 8 p.m. after I've done all my chores, and am I excited to do that and staying engaged throughout the whole lesson? Is there all the fun topics at the start and all the boring ones at the end? Are you know, pushing off theory towards the end? So this, I gave it a 6. There were times that I struggled. Maybe this is a personal reflection rather than a reflection on the course. Some of the lessons were definitely longer than others and maybe could have been split up, but generally I felt it was okay. It wasn't a detractor. Let's put it that way. Production and medium. So this is to assess the sort of quality of the learning resource itself, if that makes sense, rather than the content. So we went over it earlier. It was a pretty standard website and there was a bit of interactivity. It did the job. So it's simple, but it doesn't need to be overcomplicated, and it doesn't need to have flashy buttons and interactivity. If the content and quality is good, I think it absolutely does the job well there. Value. So basically, would I pay for it? And I think it's difficult to put a number on it yet, especially since there is so much stuff out there for free. However, considering that it is free, it is really good. I think I'm really happy that I have seen it all the way through, and obviously it's no one's forcing you to do it. It's literally free. So in my mind, that was a big win. Finally, je ne sais quoi. So I wanted a category, and this one's only scored out of 5, but I wanted some sort of metric that allowed me to capture some sort of magic or something that I didn't really feel was properly captured in those past categories, scoring them out of 10. So for this, I gave it 2, and that was purely for the Python for Kids with the moving the little stone thing. I just thought it was really good fun, and yeah, it wasn't completely standout, and I did find it a bit repetitive, but it was a good introduction. So I like to do these recaps through my presentation. So we started having a look at python.org. We've gone over all the categories and we've done the little fun bit. So what we're going to move on to now is the overview and then the recommendations. So you can read all the categories on the left, and it's good to see that I was right with the 9 being the only 9 and the highest score that it got. So for the first course, 45 out of 75. So we can see context and relevance, letting it down. Je ne sais quoi doesn't matter so much because this is for bonus points, and I'm going to be quite harsh with this. But generally, if you discount the 2 and you look at 5, 9, 6, 6, 7, 8, that's pretty good. So that's going to come out as an average of something like 6.9 per point, which is pretty respectable, to be honest. So finally, the improvement suggestions. So there's 2 broad camps of this that I can see. So first, if I was an educator and I was rewriting the course, so there's 2 suggestions that I've got here. So the first, and might have said some in the video, so discounting the update to Python 3 is to have the students do more writing. So having one exercise at the end is great, but I found myself doing all the coding on my own platform, which probably does foster a better learning experience. But in regards to the resource, I think I'd want someone to be able to pick up, let's say, a tablet or something that doesn't have any proper software installed and still come away feeling like they've learned something. So that would be one of my 2 there. So the other category is people who are learning. So this baby, that's me. So it would be to go in with a map. So I talked about this, I believe it might have been week 3, if not, then week 4, and if not, then week 5. But it would just to be to go in with an overview of what you're going to learn and what feeds into what. There's probably a little bit more to be said about why it's relevant, but I think as a starting point, going in with this map would definitely increase your efficiency going through it. And it's not going to increase your maximum understanding from what you can get, because there's only so much you can get out of it, but I definitely think this is going to get you there more quickly. So let me present to you the little map that I've come up with. I realise that's quite a lot to take in all at once, that's my bad. But how I'd restructure this course. So firstly, every lesson I completed, I uploaded to my GitHub. So that's in this bottom right here. And hopefully I remember to set the remote repository, because that's something I've learned that I didn't learn on this course actually, but hopefully I set that to public so you can have a look. So what we can see here is we've got dipping the toe, which is basically super beginner. And then we've got, these are sort of broad categories that I've come up with. And these are the lesson names as per learnpython.org. And it's me that I've put the number in front of them in the order that I tackled them. So I did just go top to bottom on the website. To start with, if you're just looking to see if it's for you or to do the sort of lesson 101. So for me, this sort of falls outside of any category. It's basically, can you use a mouse and keyboard, and can you do simple maths? Because if you can't do that, then I think you're going to struggle with the understanding required for any of this other stuff. Following that, I've listed all the topics out in a chronological sort of waterfall diagram. However, they're in their categories. So if you want to become a ninja in data structures, you could just follow this all the way through. So for example, we've got sets and list comprehensions. So a set is just a list that doesn't have any repeat data in it. And then a list comprehension is a way of creating a new list, but this uses a for loop in it to create it from an existing list. So you can see that you learn loops, or I'm proposing that you should learn loops before you learn the list comprehensions. However, if you do just want to do all of the data structure stuff, you could do it. And it's the same with, so I wasn't really sure what to call this, but essentially when you do a for loop or a function, you have to indent it and conditions. So if x is greater than y, again, semicolon, indent. So this is my sort of mostly function stuff. Once you get past conditions and loops, it's all related to functions, and maybe there's modules and packages you could call as a different thing. but then again, you call that in as a function. So, and then lastly, we've got data tools. So this category was to capture the things taught that I didn't really see as sort of declaring a variable, and I didn't really see as fitting in a function, but they all seem to be sort of related to data and checking things were correct and editing data. So I thought data tools was an okay name. So one thing that I think is really interesting about this map, again, I'm using the words really interesting loosely there, but we can see that 1.124 sort of in the right order, and then you have 5, 6, 7, 8. It's not bad. You then have 9 down here, you know, skip 10, 11. It's about in this area, and then this is sort of where it falls down. 13 over here, 3 here, 21 here. But generally, again, at the end, 28, 27, 29 towards the bottom half. So the flow of the course, whilst it's not perfect upon review, it's pretty good. And once again, it is free, so you can't really moan that much. So that is it. That is the secret sauce after 6 weeks of completing this Python course. When I look at it like this, I do wonder how it actually took 6 weeks, but here we are. It was my first one. I've saved this as an Excel file, so you don't need to worry about doing a screenshot. It's in the GitHub repository, and it's under something like the global lessons package. It's the only Excel in there. There's only 2 folders to have a look at, and it's the only Excel document in the entire repository, so I'm sure it'd be pretty easy to find. Without any further waffle from me, that is it. We're done. It's been awesome to get the first one out of the way and make a start on the second one, and it's just really great to not be doing a video on Visual Studio and to actually have something to present. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day.